Hello and welcome to the fourth video in our EagleTree Vector series. So far we've talked about what the EagleTree Vector is, we've had a look at how you plug it all together, and then we've gone through the tricks and tips to actually put it inside a fixed wing model. Now in this video what we're going to do is talk about 2 or 3 next things, because if you're following along with the video series, hopefully by now you've got the EagleTree Vector installed in your plane and all of the control surfaces are moving in the right way, they're reacting in the right way, you've got your mode switches set up, and you're thinking about going out to the field and trying some test flights. So in this one we're going to talk about the setup that you should do before every flight, just to make sure that everything is absolutely tickety-boo and nothing has happened to the Vector that would stop you from flying. And then we're going to talk about the first 2 flights that you should do with the Vector just to get everything dialed in. The first one is all about how to trim the model so that it flies perfectly straight and level, and that's the kind of trimming that you'd normally do with any fixed wing model where it's flying around and you use the trims on the radio. You might need a couple of clicks of roll or aileron to counteract any torque from the motor, you might need a click or 2 of elevator just to make sure that it maintains its height and level, and then the flight after that is going to be all around making sure that in stabilization mode that the Vector flies the plane straight and level for you as well. Once you've got those bits done, then you're in a really good place and you can use the Vector with quite a bit of confidence, and we can carry on with the series. So before we get too far into this, let's talk a little bit about the Vector flight modes. Now we looked at this earlier on in the series, and you can select 2 mode switches. Each of those switches can have up to 5 positions, and that is how you select the modes or the way that you want the Vector to fly. Now if you have a 3-position switch and you set that up as in the other videos, you should be able to move that switch on the radio and see the different indicators moving around in the lower right hand side of the graphical user interface. And again, all the stuff that we're covering in here that we're talking about, the graphical user interface, or GUI as I'll occasionally refer to it as, you can also do via the on-screen display as well. Now the 2 modes that we really want to make sure that we can select for these test flights are going to be stabilization off mode and also in 2D mode, not 2DH, just 2D mode, and we'll talk a little bit more about all the modes later in the series. Again, all the information that we're going to go through here is in the manual, and if you're not sure on anything, that's the best place to go and have a look. Control F find function to find the piece in there that is giving you the trouble. So now we've got our mode set up so that we have the ability to select stabilization off and also 2D mode, we can crack on with our first couple of test flights. Now before flying the plane there's a number of things you should always do, and there's a couple of things in this list that pilots often overlook, and talking to the EagleTree guys, those are the things that will cause you problems. So before every flight I would power up the system, I would then go into stabilization off mode and just move all of the sticks in the standard high 5 configuration to make sure that the movement of the roll surfaces, the elevator and the rudder are all correct. Once you've got that working well, flick it into 2D mode and rock the plane in your hands, just like we did last time when we're doing the setup. You're looking for the corrective action of the ailerons, the elevator and the rudder to be trying to return the plane back to straight and level flight. Again, if it isn't working properly, stop, unplug the battery and go and do some more investigation. With your FPV screen or goggles on, and also ideally with a prop off, just turn off your radio and make sure that the failsafe is detected and you can see it clearly in the top left hand corner of the on-screen display in your goggles that failsafe has been detected. So if something goes wrong and you lose the radio connection, the Vector will try and do something appropriate. Next thing is really important, wait until you have a solid 3D GPS lock before flying, or before doing anything else actually. Hopefully by the time you've got through those 3 or 4 little quick checks, the GPS will have acquired a solid GPS 3D lock and you'll be ready to fly. It will say in the on-screen display, again in the top left hand corner, that it has a 3D satellite lock. Once you've got that, then you are pretty much ready to fly with one final piece. And again, pilots that aren't able to kind of read and absorb all that huge manual that comes with the EagleTree Vector, this is the step that often gets overlooked. You need to store the GPS home location. By doing that, that then tells the vector where it's got to fly back to if there's an event of a problem, or later on if you kind of flick the switches into the return to home function. Now you can do it a number of ways. Again, you can navigate in the on-screen display and you can enable set home location, or the simpler way to do it is just flick the mode switch 10 times nice and quickly, and again in the on-screen display you'll see it in the top left hand corner letting you know that the home location is stored. If you miss this step, then the home location will be stored in the vector from the last time it was used, and if you flick return to home it'll try and fly to where that is. So if you ever accidentally forget the store GPS home location and initiate return to home, then the plane is going to fly away from you. You can have that set up automatically, and we'll look at that in a future tips and tricks video. So we're going to do each of those pieces before each of these two flights. The first flight, what you're going to do is you're just going to take off in stabilization off mode, and again that's where the vector is doing absolutely nothing. Don't bother with your goggles, this is a line of sight, just flying around the field nice and gently like you would maidening any other plane. And what you're going to do is use the trims on the radio just to make sure that it is flying straight and level, fly up and down the field, make sure that you get it as close as you possibly can, and make sure that the centre of gravity is where it needs to be in the model, and just spend 4 or 5 minutes just getting it absolutely spot on. This is where if you've already flown the plane before you put the vector in, it can be very useful, but again don't forget the vector installed inside the plane may have changed the centre of gravity and where you need to position the battery slightly. So take your time, make sure it's all set up, and then once you've got it trimmed perfectly and you're happy, then bring the plane in and land it. Once you've landed it, then we need to tell the vector that those new stick positions, because if you remember last time we spent a bit of time making sure the middle channel values were all 1500 using the sub-trim menu when we set up the radio, they'll now be slightly different because of the trims that we've moved. So now we need to either go into the on-screen display and select the incorporate trims function, which will tell the vector to treat those new positions on the radio as the neutral position, or you can rerun the complete radio calibration again, either through the on-screen display or through the GUI like we did in the last couple of videos, and that again will teach the vector the new trim positions. Don't take that trim off the radio, that's going to stay there now because that allows us to, whenever we need to flick into stabilization off or a manual mode and to fly the craft. This part of the vector setup is very clever and is so intuitive compared with some of the other GPS flight controller systems. So now we've got all that done and we've got the plane so it flies absolutely straight and level. The next thing to do is to just make sure that the vector is going to do the same thing when it's flying the plane next time. Pop a fresh battery in the model, make sure that everything's tickety-boo, go through your pre-flight checklist, again make sure the home location and everything is set, and now we're going to take off in manual mode and we're going to climb to a reasonable altitude, so if something untoward happens when we switch it into the other mode, we can switch back into stabilization off mode and we can fly it safely back to ourselves. So once we're at a reasonable height, then you're going to flick the switch into 2D mode, and what you'll find is the plane should immediately level out and fly like it's on rails. However, what you may find is that the nose is slightly down or slightly up, because typically the attitude of a plane as it's flying around is not the same horizontal position as when it was sat on the table when you tried to do the calibrate level. The vector again makes this super easy. All you have to do is, if you find that the plane isn't quite level in any of the axes, is just move the controls on the radio so it is flying straight and level, and then flick the mode switch 5 times. Now the really nice thing is the new horizontal position is stored at the first flick of the switch. So once you've got that done, you can let go of the sticks and then flick the mode switch again quickly another 4 times to make 5 times in total. The first flick tells the vector this is what level actually is for you, and then the other flicks with the final 5th click is the one that then stores that new horizontal position into the vector. Once that's done, then you've done pretty much all the hard stuff, and we're getting to the point where we can try some of the GPS stuff next. So hopefully that helps those of you that are coming into this. You first of all take off, trim the plane as normal, tell the vector to incorporate the new trims or do the radio calibration. So in stabilization off or manual mode, it's going to fly straight and level. Then take it back out again, put it into 2D mode. If it isn't completely level, fix that with the sticks, and then flick the mode switch 5 times to tell the vector that's the way that it should fly straight and level when it's in control. So join me for the next video where we're going to carry on with the series and we'll look at some of the more advanced features of this very capable flight control system. Thank you for taking the time to watch that video, and particularly for watching right to the very end. We try and release a video on Tuesday and Friday, and sometimes we'll release 1 or 2 extra ones in a week as well. All of the videos on the channel are organised into easy to use playlists, so do have a look in there, because if you're interested in a subject, we organise all the videos on that subject so you can find them easily all together in one place. If you like what we're doing, then please like and subscribe and tell others about the channel so they can come and join as well. We're available in all of the usual social media places, particularly in places like Instagram, Twitter, and we also share all of our 3D designs on Thingiverse.